Whether a believer or not, occultism has become a pervasive component in popular culture that goes beyond fiction. No longer secretive, shunned, or dangerous, it is often actively sought out as both a belief system and a practice. Although it sometimes serves as entertainment, there are those that investigate the occult for practical purposes. This investment can be as simple and benign as receiving a horoscope in a daily email or using healing crystals, though to others it is a serious practice with integrated rituals intrinsic to their daily routines. This thesaurus of Western esoteric traditions attempts to satisfy both users by collecting introductory general occult topics. It is an entry point for newcomers, or, for those more experienced, a resource for retrieving information on specific topics or related branches. It does not aim to be purpose-specific, but to meet a variety of needs. As the occult represents a broad spectrum of topics and incorporates a global perspective, we chose to limit our thesaurus to Western esoteric traditions. Within this scope, we adhered to the following standards to describe what we were looking for and what was important for general inclusion. First, that Western esotericism includes various exotic wisdom traditions and contemporary New Age spiritualities. It is generally a diffuse collection of writings concerned with the paranormal and supernatural. 2. Occult practices are regarded as involving the action or influence of supernatural or supernormal powers or some secret knowledge of them. 3. Historically, it is also thought that the occult stemming from the Latin occultus references hidden knowledge, but more commonly in our contemporary culture just refers to any non-scientific phenomena. As a whole, our group was relatively unfamiliar with what exactly the occult encompassed. The knowledge we had before digging into the domain analysis was mainly centered around popular cultural references and stereotypes, so we decided to begin our investigation by incorporating a historical approach to our research. We did so, as Yorlin suggests, in order to provide a much deeper and more coherent and ecological perspective compared to non-historical kinds of research of a mechanist nature. Once defined, the group began gathering information and terms from reference materials such as encyclopedias and topical monographs in order to research the full extent of the Western esoteric tradition. Some of our major sources included Cavendish's The Black Arts, Spence's An Encyclopedia of Occultism, and Dell's The Occult Witchcraft and Magic. As a group, we created to add around 75 terms extracted from the gathered reference materials. The number was high in order to account for overlap between member lists. After duplicates were deleted, the amassed total of terms was over 200, which was a rather unwieldy beast, so certain terms that didn't align directly with our developing domain were removed to create a more comfortable terms list closer to the recommended goal of 100. It was decided that things like specific ingredients used in spellcasting and supernatural creatures were too niche to be included in general thesaurus. And as we worked towards final term selection, we agreed to make sure terms remained as general as possible while also supporting a variety of concepts that related to our identified practices. Beginning our facet analysis, several groupings of concepts were identified. These groupings revolved around activities within the occult, forces, practitioners, religious practices and beliefs, societies within the esoteric tradition, and tools. Consulting Atchinson's fundamental facets and hierarchical relationships, the terms came together as followed. Once these groupings were established, we co-located the results. Viewing facets in this way enabled us to see similarities and patterns between terms. Although as we approached our relationship analysis, it also meant dissecting again definitions and meanings in order to understand hierarchical order. With relationship analysis, we realized that our emphasis on general occult terminology may have not been the wisest decision. The Western esoteric tradition and much of what is in it can be very ambiguous. Originally, one of our selection criteria was to choose preferred terms based on both the frequency of usage found in the literature we surveyed and acute definitions of the terms. However, we found more often than not those two strategies contradicted one another. The most frequently used terms were often the incorrect ones. In most cases, we ultimately decided to reflect the actual meanings of the terms. It was specifically for these that non-preferred terms were left to guide the user to the correct terms. Some examples of this were spells use incantations, transmutation use alchemy, and the devil use Satan. Also for the term gypsies, we made it a non-preferred term in favor of Romanese because of racist connotations associated with the term. In order to establish relationships between terms, guidance was taken from multiple aspects of the ANSI-NISO guidelines. We evaluated terms based on equivalency, hierarchy, and associative relationships as delineated in the classified index. For the most part, our terms didn't have any problems with synonymy, and there was only a small instance of non-preferred terms used. Generally, terms that had equivalents were mostly based on near synonyms. A good example of this can be found with the term Satan, which we've put as the preferred term over the more popular cultural equivalent of the devil. Satan was chosen as it is more specific in meaning and does not carry the more ambiguous connotations that the term the devil is burdened with. Whole-part relationships were the most common relationship in the thesaurus, but hierarchical, generic, and polyhierarchical relations were used as well throughout. When it came to final term selection, the W32 software was used to manage the terms already collected. The output was reviewed in order to find any orphan or ambiguous terms. Originally, there were 115 terms generated with 4 non-preferred terms. After finding orphan terms, the total became 113 terms with 4 non-preferred. All in all, upon completion, we leave knowing that this is just the tip of the iceberg. Due to its ambiguity and tendency to be a catch-all for a variety of topics that may or may not have any correlation with one another, it seems impossible to have one comprehensive compendium on the occult. As we discovered, one could make a thesaurus on one facet of one practice alone. It is truly an interesting and a challenging topic that will keep us curious beyond the completion of this project.